Okay, this shift, this movement from ambition to meaning, from the morning to the afternoon of your life, generally it's preceded by what we call a quantum moment. Sounds strange perhaps to use a term like that, but quantum moment really refers to the characteristics of what it is like when you have what Maslow called a peak experience. The first of these qualities, there's four of them. The first of them is that it's very vivid. The second quality or characteristic of these quantum moments is that it's a surprise. And the third characteristic of these quantum moments is that they are benevolent. They always feel good. The fourth and final quality is that it's enduring. That is, it isn't just something that comes and then goes and it's out the window. It lasts with you forever. For example, I left drinking behind in my life 21 years ago. And I couldn't even imagine that I could have given it up because I'd always had 2 or 3 beers every single day for the previous 10, 15, 20 years. I couldn't even remember a day when I hadn't. And I knew that I had to make that change. And it was 4:05 a.m. in the morning. I could remember the clock when it turned. I woke up and there was like a breeze in the room, something that I've never experienced before. The smell of roses. This was 21 years ago now. I can tell you what was hanging on the closet, the hook that I had there. On the mirror there, I had a cartoon that I had there. I can still see that thing exactly as if it happened this morning. The vividness of this is something that I've never ever been able to forget. I can remember how surprised I was at what was happening at that time. It was almost as if some kind of force had taken over, and I was just amazed by it. It's like when the moment is right, when you are in a different state, in a different place in your life, exactly what is supposed to happen will happen for you. The low points in your own life, these times when you think that nothing could go any worse, oftentimes are the things that we need to propel ourselves to a higher place. Let me give you an example. The night before that moment that I just described to you, I had taken my entire family, 5 children, and my wife, and we had all gone to this restaurant. And like I always did, every single time I went to a restaurant, I ordered not just 1 beer, but 2. And that was so that in case the waiter wasn't there when I wanted my second one, I would be able to have it. And the waiter said to me, "Oh, excuse me, sir." He said, "I'm sorry, but I can't serve you alcohol." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, last night one of our waiters served someone who was underage, and we had our license suspended." I said, "Come on, we're getting out of here." And I made each one of my children get up, get back into the car, strapped into their car seats and so on. My wife, who God knows had so much to do and it was such a hardship for her, but it didn't seem to matter to me at that time because I wanted to have my beers and I was making myself more important than everyone else. And we drove off and went to another restaurant. And I can remember thinking that night as I went to sleep how ashamed I was. My wife tried to talk to me a little bit about it, but I would have none of it. I was right, and that's just what the ego always makes you. It makes you right. And that night, that experience that I had at 4:05 a.m. the next day, not only did it get me off of alcohol, it probably saved my life. It transformed my life in so many different ways.
Once you're in that state of God realization, you'll understand things like your intuition. That is that inner calling that says, go this way instead of that way. Try this. Don't be afraid of that. Get rid of the fears that are so dominating your life. As Anita talks about fear and what a thing it was that created the cancer in her life, which allowed her to almost come to a place of dying. You'll discover things like synchronicity, that you have a thought and all of a sudden what you place your attention on begins to manifest and arrive in your life. You'll discover that those thoughts are not just things that are happenstance. There's no happenstance in this entire universe. It's all held together by a divine light. And one of my favorite readings I'd like to share with you is from the life and teachings of the Masters of the Far East. It said, "It has been clearly stated that life lived by the average individual is hypnotic. That is, the majority of men and women are not living life as it was intended at all. Not 1 in a million feels the freedom to live what he inwardly feels he should live. He has come under the world's opinion of himself, and this opinion is what he obeys rather than the laws of his own being. In this respect, And to this degree, he is living under an hypnotic spell. It's like hypnosis. He lives under the delusion that he is a mere human being living in a merely material world and only hopes to escape it when he dies and goes to what he calls heaven. This is not the determination intended in the plan and purpose of life. Obedience to one's inner nature, the expression of life as he instinctively feels it ought to be expressed, is the very foundation of the life which the Masters reveal as the only true mode of living. That is very powerful awareness, that you are not this body that you're in, this body that comes and goes. You are the invisible, divine intelligence within, the same intelligence that allows a clay pot to exist. And finally, from the Masters of the Far East, the second volume, the moment you become free from the belief that you are mere human beings, subject to human laws of life and death and the limitations which human beings have imposed, that moment you will see that you are free from all human limitations and may become sons of God, if you will. The moment you realize that you are divine, that you are free from all limitations and possessed of the strength of divinity, and you know that this divinity is the place where being comes most directly in contact with God, man is then beginning to see and know that this divinity is not something to be injected into each other from without. He is beginning to know that it is the very life of each and every person, your essence, the light within you.
Line by Albert Einstein when he was talking to his students about trying to solve mathematical problems and equations. He said, you can't ever solve a problem with the same mind that created it. It's what they call sometimes in management circles thinking outside of the dots or outside of the box, getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of looking at things the way you've always looked at them, and having a different kind of an awareness. I came across this quote not too long ago. Moving away the clouds does not make the sunshine. It merely reveals what was hidden all along. The sunshine, the sun is always there. And you don't make it shine by just taking things away. There's something inside all of us that is hidden. And it's the ability to, I call it rewriting our agreement with reality. It requires a new kind of awareness, a willingness, if you will, to see yourself as potentially capable of virtually anything. I've always loved the observation from the New Testament of Jesus, that even the least among you can do all that I have done and even greater things. That within each and every one of us there is this ability to be healers. There's this ability to be able to manifest and attract anything into our lives that we put our attention on. There's this ability to live at such a high level of consciousness that we can transcend our bodies. My internal wiring has always been one of whatever it is that I've got in my life as a problem, that I have to take responsibility for it, but I also have the capacity to be able to change it. And not only to change around what it is that is not working for me, but also to change around what I have been attracting into my life. I think it begins with this this whole idea of being inspired. I've always liked that word, inspired, inspiration, because its origin is in spirit. And then the opposite word is being informed. And so when you're in form, in the physical world, when you're in form, you get information. You get lots of information. And this is what we call the information age, right? So there's no shortage of information. They say that on a little chip the size of your thumbnail, we can put the names and addresses of everybody in the United States and Canada on a little chip the size of your thumbnail. That's really more information, I think, than we need. What we are doing is we are moving from the age of information to the age of inspiration, I believe. And as we move into the age of inspiration, where collectively mankind is beginning to have a collective capacity to be able to think thoughts which empower us rather than which weaken us, which, according to Hawkins' research, up until about 1985 or 1986, collectively, mankind's collective thoughts always produced that which weakens us. And now, in the last few years, we have moved above the level where man's collective consciousness is at least at a place where collectively we are empowering ourselves rather than using force. And as we move into the world of inspiration, we have to understand what that means. And Patanjali had a wonderful observation. I wrote about it in Wisdom of the Ages. He said, when you are inspired, that is, in spirit, and remember, it is in the world of spirit, it is in the world of thoughts where we change, where we go to the place where we create anything we want for ourselves in our lives. So that remembering here, the theme is that you can't solve any problem that you might have in your life with the same mind that created it. So you're moving into a place now called spirit. That which is seen hath not come from that which doth appear. We're moving into the world of the invisible now. When you are inspired, and think about the moments in your life when you've had the most inspiration, inspirado. You lose any touch of fatigue. I have gone and been inspired at moments in my life when I have written for almost 24 straight hours without stopping, without eating, without thinking about sleep. I just got into one of those modes, what we call a zone sometimes, where everything just flowed. When you are in that place, you transcend everything. And you don't worry about whether people are going to call you or not call you. You don't worry about your children. You don't worry about being sick. You don't think about the cold that you might have. You don't think about being tired and how much sleep you'll need. When you're inspired, you're in spirit. When you're in spirit, you're connected to your source. And now what you're doing is you're moving out of the mindset of inform or information, which is where all problems occur in the world of the physical, and you're shifting into the world of spirit.
Two quotes. The first from the Upanishads, quote, "Life in the world and life in the spirit are not incompatible," unquote. And from Søren Kierkegaard, the great Danish theologian, quote, "The majority of men live without being thoroughly conscious that they are spiritual beings," unquote. Heaven should not be thought of as a place you'll ultimately arrive at once you leave this earthly existence. Rather, it seems to me that you'd want to experience heaven right here on earth. As the title of this chapter suggests from a poem by Elizabeth Barrett Browning, earth itself is crammed with heaven. But do you see heaven in your daily life? Do you feel as if you're in a heavenly world? If the answer is no, then you're out of balance. You've probably made your physical world the primary focus of your life, with little or no attention given to the heavenly part of your earthly existence. What this imbalance looks like. When you place the larger part of your life energy on the material world, you're generally in a continual state of worry about your stuff, and you feel like you'll never get ahead in this game of life. Virtually all of your mental energy is focused on what you have or don't have. You assess your worth based on such material issues as what kind of automobile you drive or how fashionably you're dressed. You may even feel inferior because other people have more stuff. This imbalance between the spiritual and material world usually means that indebtedness is a way of life. You place a heavy emphasis on winning, becoming number one, and comparing yourself to others. A preoccupation with the material aspects of life leads to looking at life in a superficial way, where appearance is viewed as more important than substance. What others think is the most important measuring device, and how you stack up to externally imposed standards becomes all important. All of this anxiety that leads to stress is avoidable if you opt to balance the material-spiritual scale. Just a balance, an even split between these two aspects of yourself, is all you need to achieve. The title of this chapter, Earth's Crammed with Heaven, is meant to signify that it's all right here, right now, not in some other place in a distant future years from now or after the death of your physical self. Heaven is right here, now, at this time, when you find your balance point. Equalizing the balance scale. Heaven is a state of mind, not a location. Since spirit is everywhere and in everything, you can begin equalizing your material and spiritual life by making a conscious decision to look for the unfolding of spirit in everything and everyone that you encounter. I personally do this by making an effort to look upon my world as if I were observing it through lenses that filter out the form and all of the material aspects of what I'm seeing, and I can only view the spiritual energy that allows what I'm noticing to exist. Try putting on these imaginary magical lenses and see how different everything appears. The natural world is a pleasant place to begin this experiment. Nature. When you look at a tree without these imaginary form-fitting lenses, you may see branches, blossoms, leaves, and perhaps mangoes or plums. With your enchanting new lenses, the lines that form tree boundaries dissolve, and there's an energy vibrating so fast that it gives a whole new perspective of the tree. You see the spaces between the leaves, and notice the silence of the now defunct acorn or mango pit out of which the first sprout of creation emerged, jump-starting the whole process that eventually became the tree you're looking at. You see the continuation of this life-giving process residing deep within the tree that lets it sleep in the winter and blossom in the spring, or into infinity, or at least for the duration of its life. You realize that new mangoes are producing not only new fruit, but an infinity of mango trees as well. You see this life force in just one tree extending backward and forward in a never-ending stream of creation. Begin looking at all of nature with this new vision. Birds, ants, lakes, mountains, clouds, stars, all of it. Deepen your vision so that you no longer see only form and boundaries. Appreciate the miracle that is your environment. As you do so, you're getting into balance. People. These new lenses allow you to see everyone in a fresh perspective. You're no longer seeing tall and short, dark and light, male and female, old and young, beautiful and homely. Your lenses blur the lines that categorize people by cultural or religious differences, and you don't see others as only their attire or physical appearances or the language they speak. All appearances dissolve through filters in your lenses and your thoughts, so you now see the unfolding of the spiritual energy in every person you encounter. What you notice is pure love vibrating right before your eyes. You see kindness personified. You see and feel the same vulnerabilities in all others that you feel within yourself. You see enormous strands of peaceful, glimmering energy connecting each of us. Your new outlook invites you to playfully imagine that 2 people created you, and 4 people created the 2 people who created you, and 8 people created the 4 people who created the 2 people who created you. As we go back a few more generations to the time of Abraham Lincoln, there are 16,000 people you're related to who had to come together to create you. We can imagine going back to the time of Socrates and puzzle over the apparent math we come up with. Trillions of people were needed to create one of us, but trillions of people haven't even existed, so somehow, in some mathematically puzzling way, we're all related to each other. These are the kinds of fascinating connections that you can begin to observe with your imaginary lenses, transforming your thoughts. You discover that there's no one to judge, no one to hate, and no one to harm, because you see clearly that we're related. In fact, we're all one. From here, you can extend your perspective to include all of life. Events. Where you once viewed the comings and goings of people as pure happenstance in current time shaping the events of your life and the lives of everyone else, your new filtering lenses allow you to see how all of these things are connected energetically. Now you see an infinite network of laser-like energies emanating from the thoughts of everyone, blending the events in everyone's life in energetic perfection. You see people with very fast vibrations of energy matching up perfectly with the energy of the source of creation. You see how they attune with the all-creating, all-knowing source of life, and how events are perfectly attracted in a vibrational match. You also see what appears to be accidents, tragedies, and horrors, and how they, too, are vibrational matches that collide in what you've called mistakes, but are really the result of 2 or more energies meeting in a larger picture that you couldn't previously see. You witness the connection between the expectations of individuals and what they attract into their lives. With these amazing lenses, you note that all events and all accidental encounters are really incredibly compatible vibrational matches rather than randomly occurring situations. With this awareness, you're attaining a level of balance between spirit and form. And this principle of contemplation is so intriguing to me. How many times I have said to my children, contemplate yourselves surrounded by the conditions which you intend to produce. You get what you think about, whether you want it or not. This thing that we call our thoughts is really the highest place within us, and we can use them to be thoughts that are aligned and think like God thinks, or we can use them as excuses and misalign ourselves and remind ourselves that God doesn't need any excuses. And so as you think of yourself as a God-realized being, you won't be doing that either. Contemplation is the continuous use of your thought process. How you use your thought process to train your mind in a new way. Remember, we are training ourselves in this seminar to elevate our concept of ourselves to a place that matches what it is that we would like to live out and attract and be in our lives. That's what we're doing. We're shifting our conception of ourselves and beginning to see ourselves as pieces of God from which we can never be disconnected. Secondly, your thoughts are actually like things that act to begin the process of materialization. So that what you think about ultimately becomes what you become and what becomes of you. If you contemplate with thoughts that match originating spirit, which is Thomas Troward's word for God, if you contemplate with thoughts that match originating spirit, then you will have the same power as originating spirit. That's an alarming thing to think and say. As you begin to contemplate in the same way that the creative force of the universe contemplates, then what you do is you shift out of your excuse pattern of things can't happen and won't happen into I am thinking in such a way that originating spirit thinks, and therefore if I continue to stay there, I will have the same power as originating spirit, because you are originating spirit. You can't be separated from it. When contemplation is a vibrational match to originating spirit, you gain the cooperation of divine mind, attracting and fulfilling your desires. Let me say it again. When contemplation is a vibrational match to originating spirit, and everything is vibration, every thought is vibration, you gain the cooperation of divine mind, attracting and fulfilling your desires. Contemplation, next, is therefore a kind of action in and of itself which sets into motion all of the creative forces of the universe. You want to set into motion the energy that will allow you to attract into your life what you want. You want to be not thinking about a BMW in your driveway or a new Rolex on your arm. You want to be thinking like God thinks and living from those cardinal virtues, and recognize that you do not attract into this world what you want. You attract what you are. And as you become it and it becomes you, it becomes limitless. And a BMW makes no difference. When you rely on excuses, you allow your false self, the ego, to contemplate what you do not want or what you cannot have. Do you get that? When you rely on excuses, you give evidence that you contemplate what you can't have or what you don't want. Every time you come up with a reason why you can't do something or you can't have something, you are giving evidence that you are contemplating in a way that is not aligned with originating spirit. Therefore, you lose the power of originating spirit. Return to the ego. Every excuse you ever use for anything is evidence that you're contemplating what you can't have. Now, why you would want to contemplate what you can't have or what's missing in your life is a meme handed to you because basically you've been taught you're not worthy of all of that. God is worthy of that. You're not God. There's nothing more blasphemous than saying you are God, except we've been saying it here a lot. The presence of excuses in your life is evidence that you contemplate what you can't have or can't do, rather than the infinite possibilities that are inherent in your divine self.
So some of the things that you can do on a daily basis to begin to put this principle into practice are, I think, one of the most important things. The very first one, I have a sign on my refrigerator that I look at every day, and so do all of my children, and it says, I love what I do, and I do what I love. And this is a very important principle to have in your life. If you're doing something and you don't love it, then change your attitude toward it, or B, change what you're doing. But as long as you have the option of using love in your life, then you want to do what you love and love what you do. So practice saying that over and over again. And when you find yourself about to complain and find fault with something, remind yourself, I'm doing what I love and I'm loving what I do. And I always have the choice to love it. Even if it's something that I would rather not be doing at the moment, you can still do it with a sense of love. And then the second thing I would recommend in honoring your worthiness to receive is to make every effort to remove the habits that you have of pessimism and negativity and judgment and complaining and gossip and cynicism and resentment and fault-finding. All of these kinds of ways that we have in our inner dialogues and our outer dialogues. You get these words out of your vocabulary and you replace them with words of optimism and love and acceptance and kindness and peace as your way of communicating, as your way of processing your world and all the people that are in it. It's just a habit. Most of these things about complaining about the weather or complaining about the way your Aunt Tilly does her hair or not liking the way the dog comes in the morning or whatever it is, all of these things are just habits that you've cultivated, and they keep you from feeling worthy of receiving all that you would like to have manifesting. Love is the energy that will bring that to you, and if you don't experience and use this love in your own communications, then it will be blocked from your life. I'd also, of course, always give yourself quiet time each day to erase any feelings that you have of unworthiness. One of the cliches of our culture today is that God doesn't make any garbage. God doesn't make any mistakes. And you are not a mistake. You are absolutely as holy and divine as everyone and everything else on this planet now, or that has ever been here or ever will be. That divine energy and force is within you. It can't be taken away from you. And just take a moment or two every time that you start putting yourself down or finding fault with something about yourself to remind yourself that you are a divine creation. You are a piece of God. And when you put yourself down, you're literally putting God down. And that's something you want to avoid doing. I would recommend also each day that you read spiritual literature or poetry. You'll see a lot of poetry and a lot of references to spiritual literature and throughout this program and all of the programs that I've produced for Nightingale Conant and in all of my books, because it's something that I work at every day. I can't go into a bookstore without coming home with some new piece of poetry or new essays that someone might have written, and I just set them in key places in my house, and I read them, and I encourage other people to read them, and I take passages out of them. It's almost like doing my spiritual homework, and I do it each and every day of my life. Also, I would allow yourself to be surrounded by things of beauty as much as possible. One of the things that we have in our home is fresh flowers every day. They're always there, and when they have a tendency to dry out, then we replace them with new flowers. And nice photographs, and putting on our walls pictures of the children and good times and wonderful memories, so that we can look at these things of beauty, including pictures of yourself. And I would also practice kindness toward yourself as frequently as possible. The more that you can remember that you are worthy of that kindness, and give yourself a chance to just do something extra nice for yourself. You know, get that expensive thing on the menu, or buy yourself that little bottle of perfume, or give yourself the option of having a glass of wine on an airplane, or sitting in first class, or whatever it is that might be something that you would enjoy. The final thing that I would do in assessing my worthiness is to begin to process the universe as a friendly place rather than an unfriendly place. I mean, this is the only place that you have. This air that you're breathing is very friendly. This fire that keeps you warm, this sun that keeps you warm, it's very friendly. And so is the grass that you walk upon, and so is the snow that falls down, and so is the rain. Everything about the universe is supportive of you. So see it as a friendly place, rather than a place that is conspiring against you.